Felt like your child is being turned against you and you don't know why? I think a lot of parents have this question, and we're going to talk about this today in terms of why this happens. This usually occurs out of a divorce, and parents don't know what to do or where to turn. We're talking about something known as parental alienation, and there are signs and symptoms of this that I'm going to go over with you today. I'm also going to give my opinion on, is this truly parental alienation or is it estrangement, or how do you determine the difference? So let's begin. First of all, sometimes this happens and you'll notice that out of the blue or suddenly your child becomes distant or cold or even hostile towards you for no clear reason. You might be witnessing the subtle but serious effects of what we know is parental alienation. And this happens when one parent blatantly manipulates a child into rejecting the other parent, often during or after a separation or a divorce. It's emotionally damaging, and your kids can have long-term psychological effects from this. This usually occurs in a very high conflict divorce where the parents or one of the parents hates the ex more than they care about their kids, and they're doing everything possible to hurt their ex, but they're not understanding that by doing that, it is also hurting their child. And it can lead to certain things such as hearing your child repeat the same words as your ex does, using the same terms to communicate with you, so on and so on. So, here are some key signs and symptoms for parental alienation to watch for emotionally and behaviorally that could help you in noticing if this is going on. One, anger or hatred towards one parent. The child is suddenly expressing extreme negativity or hatred without real reason. And when I say real reason, it means that the child doesn't have any reason at all to uh, be mad at you in terms of the relationship that you've had with them. It's key to understanding that, because a lot of kids will also report when it comes to alienation that, no, my parent didn't say that. My mother or my father was like this when I was in the home. And, that made me feel this way or that way towards them. So sometimes it can be a combination of the parent and also what happened in the home with you. And you have to be sure about that. That is a very important part of all of this. Is the anger disproportionate to any actual conflict that went on within the home? I mean, if you two argued a lot within the home and your child is carrying that and feels that you contributed to that, that's not parental alienation. What we're talking about here is pure anger or hatred towards you when there's no other justifiable reason for it than just that parent trying to brainwash them against you. Another thing to look for is lack of guilt or ambivalence. The child or your child doesn't show any guilt for being cruel or disrespectful to you. They never apologize for it. They never feel bad about it. They're just coming into your home and they're belligerent, or they're just not talking to you at all. They never sent you an email about why they're mad at you or a text message. So they have a lack of guilt about it. They see one parent is all good and the other is all bad. That's another example of how this could manifest with you, that the father's all good and you're all bad, or you're all good and the father's all bad. Those things can go along with parental alienation. Something that I talked about before that is really important here is parroting the alienating parent, meaning that they use phrases or accusations that sound rehearsed or too mature for them, that they'll be using language that is way beyond their age, like a 10-year-old is talking like a 20-year-old or talking like an adult. And that's a change that you have seen over time. And it's clear to you that they're now echoing the words of somebody else, which is your ex or your ex co-parent. Refusing contact without any explanation is another example. They avoid visits or communication without a clear reason. But if they give you a clear reason, okay, and they're saying, I want to do this, I want to go out Friday night with my friends, but you're saying to them that, no, it's your time to be with me, that is not alienation, everyone. That is a kid that wants to be with their friends because they're a teenager, which is part of life, and really is just saying, I want to be with my friends rather than be with my parent because that's a normal part of development. But if they keep canceling on you without giving an explanation, it's possible the parental alienation is going on. And when you ask why they're canceling, a lot of times their responses will be very vague, like they can't come up with something. So that's another symptom of how parent alienation may occur. Another one is unnatural loyalty to one parent, meaning they side with one parent in every situation. And I mean every situation. There's no compromise, there's no understanding of your side, even if they weren't there at the time. For example, if you've had a conflict with their other parent and they're just taking that parent's side all the time and you were never there and you know not you weren't there, they weren't there, and they didn't see what was going on, then you can suspect that perhaps alienation is occurring. And they have a hard time, oftentimes, remembering positive experiences with the alienated parent. So a lot of times that will occur too, that they say they can't remember anything that was positive with you. Well, everybody has positive and negative experiences with their parents. So that can be another example that alienation is occurring. Okay, all of these things that we just talked about can occur, and we can call it parental alienation. Okay. But we can also call it estrangement. And it's very difficult to understand if parent alienation is going on or estrangement is actually occurring. Estrangement is usually when a child pulls away from that parent because they feel that the parent isn't listening to them, isn't validating them, isn't acknowledging or hearing what they have to say. Parental alienation is strictly when a parent takes a child and starts to brainwash them and tell them that their parent is horrible, that they're confiding in them over and over about instances that happen personally between you and um, your ex. And they begin to make that child into their everything. That's parental alienation. Estrangement is when both parents have participated in, making mistakes while parenting. And sometimes that happens. None of us are perfect. And the child feels within themselves that they are pulling away from that parent, that they don't feel heard or seen by. So it's very important that you determine within yourself what is truly going on here. Not everybody's case matches parental alienation. Not everybody's case matches estrangement. And that's why it's so important. It is very, very important that if you are speculating that parental alienation is going on or estrangement is going on, that you really talk to a professional about this to weed through all the stuff and find out if it's alienation or if it is estrangement because they are very different and they are looked at differently, and different techniques and tools should be offered to you based on what is actually happening. You go on the internet today and you see all these lists of what alienation is, what estrangement is, and people read it and you're just buying into it. It doesn't happen like that. You really have to sort through this to understand what it is and what it isn't. Everybody's situation, everybody's family situation is different. And I'm going to go over those some psychological red flags with you right now that go on with estranged children and with children that are alienated. And as you will see, these psychological red flags go on when there's estrangement or alienation going on. So some of the effects that alienation or estrangement causes is low self-esteem in children, identity confusion, depression or anxiety, and difficult forming healthy relationships in the future. This goes along with both of these uh, categories. So, again, it's so important that you understand what you're actually dealing with here. There are situations where alienation occurs. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I've seen a lot of times that they're getting confused with estrangement situations. So, but what doesn't get confused here is the psychological effect it has on your children. And that is where I feel parents need to put their energy into helping their children navigate through this, no matter if it is estrangement or alienation. Your children need you to help them. They have low self-esteem because they don't know where they fit in. If they're being placed in a tug of war between two parents, then they are angry and nobody wants to be caught in the middle. Or they feel like they're worthless. Why did this happen to me? Why did my parents get divorced? Why are they fighting? So they don't feel very good about themselves. And unfortunately, that carries over into their peer relationships as they grow up. Identity confusion happens a lot. We're seeing more and more of that um, daily. And it's shown now that it does come from divorced parents or conflict within the parents because, again, they want a sense of belonging and they're not getting it through the family system. Depression or anxiety, I'm sure you know, goes along with loss. And a divorce is a loss for a child. It's a loss of an intact family. It's a loss of um, sometimes living with their siblings, of the dream that they had of having two parents at events or anything. It's a big loss. And so depression or anxiety goes along with it. And they have a lot of difficulty forming healthy relationships in the future. And I remember a kid telling me once that the one thing that their parents taught them the most is how not to resolve conflicts. And they said that's why they have so many problems, you know, dealing with conflicts in their own life. So all these things can be helped and change can take place, whether it's alienation or it is estrangement. But be clear on what you are dealing with. Um, Parental alienation, if we talk about that for a minute, it's not just a family issue. It's a form of emotional abuse. It really is. And if this is happening and it's left unchecked, it can really destroy the parent-child bond over time and cause lifelong harm. I cannot deny that. But what I will say again is that it's so important that you distinguish between if it is alienation or estrangement. But if you are expecting or suspecting that parental alienation is going on, here are some things that you can do. One, Document the behaviors and the conversations that you're having with the other parent. That is very, very important because that's what you can use if you're going into court. Seek legal advice. Also, I encourage you to talk to a coach or a therapist that specializes in this before you actually seek legal advice because everybody wants to run to the legal experts. But this is more of an emotional family issue. So I would first let you know that I think it's best to go to a therapist or coach that works in this niche, that has a better understanding of how to guide you through this. Because if it's estrangement and not parental alienation, that's not going to hold up in court. So seek legal advice second. And most people don't do that, but I'll tell you, when they get to me, they say, I wish I would have talked to you earlier, Dr. Sue. I needed you in my life 10 years ago before I went through all of this. Because because lawyers are there to do their job and therapists and coaches are there to do another job. Your lawyer is not your therapist, and your therapist or coach is not your lawyer. So you really do need both. I want you to also remember that it's so important to stay consistent, calm, and loving with your child while they are going through this. The most important thing that I see in these situations that help parents navigate through this is being consistent in their messages and not throwing the other parent under the bus, not saying your dad is doing this or your mom is doing that. Always, always validate their feelings. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. You are not going to convince that child if they are being brainwashed that you are right and they are wrong. It is a waste of your time. It is a frustration to you, and it is not going to work. You let your child know instead that you love them no matter what, that you understand that this is difficult to go through, and that you're going to keep showing up for them and being there for them no matter what, that you're not judging them, that you're not telling them that they're wrong. Those kinds of things, no matter if it's alienation, no matter if it's estrangement, are not going to lead to reconnection. It's going to lead to you forcing your child away from you. And that's not the goal here. So, is parent alienation real? Yes, it can be real in specific circumstances, not all circumstances. You know, most people that come to me and say, Oh, Dr. Sue, I'm going through parental alienation, I meet every criteria. And then I'll start to talk to them. Then I'll start to go through their history. Then I'll start to ask different questions. And it ends up that a lot of times it's not alienation. Sometimes it is, but not all the time. And as we go through the history and we look at the dynamic that was going on, even within the home before the divorce, where both parents were living there and they were not aware of perhaps how they were raising their voices, or they were under so much anxiety that they weren't aware how they were reacting to their children, that often can be interpreted as parental alienation when it's often that you're under so much stress that you weren't aware how you were acting towards your child. Now, look, I've been doing this long enough to know that most parents are not intentionally trying to hurt their children. And I understand that, but intentionally or not, it still hurts your child. So the first step, as I said, is really understanding whether or not this is alienation or it is estrangement. You want to protect your child, right? You want to protect your relationship with your child. And that's where your power is. Your power is to protect your relationship with your child, not to participate in this boxing match between you and your ex. That doesn't protect your child. And I've reunited a lot of families over the years. And the one thing that always sticks out in my mind is that the parents that focus more on their relationship with their child end up having a better relationship with their child in the long run. So I hope that today you learned a lot about parent alienation and the difference between estrangement and parent alienation. It is very important when you are seeking out help to recognize the differences, do some research on, and when you reach out to somebody, it's fine to say, I'm not sure if this is alienation and I'm not sure if this is estrangement. Can you help me to understand this? Makes a lot of difference, especially if you're in the court system.